Whether it was the American military assault on Libya in 1986, on Iraq in 2002, or on Syria in 2014, whenever it has so desired, America has attempted to alter the destiny of the Middle East. However, there is one nation that for several decades now has remained beyond its control: Iran. Even today, the United States and Israel continue to search for cracks within Iran's fortress, a task that will prove far from easy. History bears witness that over the past 600 years, not a single inch of Iran's borders has shifted from its place, whether the aggressors were the Romans, Arabs, Turks, Russians, or even the British Empire. Iran has repeatedly demonstrated that it possesses the resilience to withstand even the most massive of assaults. But what ultimately is the true secret behind this strength? What is the defining characteristic that sets Iran apart from other Arab nations and renders it so remarkably indomitable? Once again, welcome to Shadow Atlas. Viewers, let us begin by discussing a gift that nature itself has bestowed upon Iran. If one were to describe Iran in a single sentence, it is quite simply a colossal fortress. It is a fortress whose walls were not constructed by human hands, but rather by nature itself. The country is encircled on all sides by mountains. To the south lies the Zagros mountain range, a chain of peaks that serves as a formidable defensive wall against any enemies approaching from Iran's southern flank. Towards the southwest, these Zagros mountains gradually slope down towards Iraq, yet towards the northwest, they rise to such rugged and towering heights that they form an impenetrable border with Turkey. Wherever mountains are absent, marshlands prevail, particularly at the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These marshlands too serve as a natural barrier, much like the deep moat that typically surrounds a fortress. So much for the borders shared with Iraq and Turkey. Turning our gaze northward towards the Caspian Sea and Azerbaijan, we find the Alborz mountain range standing guard. Looking eastward, we see smaller mountain ranges winding around Iran like a ribbon, forming its borders with Afghanistan and Pakistan. In essence, these mountains have safeguarded Iran on all sides, much like a fortress. Meanwhile, to the south, the Persian Gulf serves as the final wall of this fortress. Should any invading force attempt to conquer the country from the Persian Gulf, they would be confronted by mountains towering up to 1.5 kilometers in height, stretching nearly 250 kilometers inland. A nation's geographical location plays a pivotal role in determining the feasibility of its conquest. Similarly, natural mountain ranges have protected Afghanistan to this very day, whether the adversary was the Soviet Union or the United States. These mountains are equally vital to Iran's security. Indeed, every attempt to conquer Iran over the past 600 years has ended in failure. Moving beyond Iran's borders to its interior, we encounter two vast deserts, the Dashti Kavir and the Dashti Lut. These regions are so barren that the population is compelled to inhabit the mountainous terrain. The vast majority of Iran's total population of 90 million resides within these very mountain regions. This is precisely why, for any foreign army penetrating Iran's interior and establishing control has always remained a daunting nightmare. For enemies approaching by land, the terrain presents logistical nightmares on one front, while on another, issues regarding supply lines, treacherous passes and harsh weather conditions pose a constant stream of fresh challenges. However, there is another facet to this story. While these very mountain ranges serve to protect Iran, they also effectively hold it captive. Historically speaking, whenever Iran has attempted to expand westward, these very mountain ranges have served as significant barriers. This is precisely why, in order to maintain its presence in the south and west, Iran does not engage in direct warfare. Instead, it has established a network of Shia proxy groups, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, and Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Palestine. That covers the strategic advantages afforded by Iran's geography. Now let us turn our attention to the Strait of Hormuz. As I have mentioned in a previous video, the Strait of Hormuz holds immense strategic value for Iran. As you can observe here, the entire northern stretch of the Persian Gulf from one end to the other lies exclusively under Iranian control. Conversely, the southern portion is shared among 7 nations: Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE and Oman. This entrance to the Persian Gulf is known as the Strait of Hormuz, where the coastline to the north belongs entirely to Iran, while the southern side comprises only a small segment belonging to Oman. On the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz, the coastline forms a distinct V-shape. This geographical configuration allows Iran to exercise superior control over this vital passage from three different directions. As for the southern section controlled by Oman, it is not only tapered, but also characterized by narrow mountainous terrain, and it extends into the Strait of Hormuz for a mere 50 kilometers. Consequently, it has always been relatively easy for Iran to blockade the Strait of Hormuz at this specific juncture. And now, following attacks by the US and Israel, they have finally exercised this option. Iran has explicitly declared that if any vessel belonging to any nation attempts to approach the Strait of Hormuz, it will be set ablaze. By taking such a stance, Iran can exert pressure not only upon the Gulf nations, but upon the entire global community. This is because 20% of the world's oil, 90% of Qatar's LNG, and 5% of the global economy depend on the Strait of Hormuz. In 2025, the global economy stood at $120 trillion were the Strait of Hormuz to be shut down. $6 trillion of that value would vanish instantly. Should any power attempt to occupy or attack Iran, the country possesses an invaluable asset, the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz and thereby exert immense pressure on the entire world. Iran's third strategic advantage lies in its exceptionally long coastline. Iran has a total perimeter of 8,731 kilometers, 2,815 kilometers of which consist of a maritime coastline spanning the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf. In other words, 32% of Iran's borders are defined by its coastline. And let me emphasize that this is no ordinary coastline. Typically, a coastline is followed by sandy terrain here. However, there are mountain ranges precisely where Iran has deployed missile batteries at secret locations. The area is riddled with caves and numerous blind spots that remain completely invisible to satellite or drone surveillance. Even if an enemy force were to successfully land ashore from the sea, they would immediately be confronted by these mountains, from which sudden surprise attacks could be launched against them. Beyond its geography, specifically the Strait of Hormuz and its rugged coastline, Iran possesses a third shield protecting it from foreign invaders, the diverse ethnic groups that inhabit the land. How so? Iran is a multi-ethnic nation. This means it is not inhabited by a single ethnic group alone. Rather, it is home to a variety of distinct tribes and communities, including Persians, Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, Balochs and Turkmens. When the populace of any nation is composed of various ethnic groups, the greatest challenge that arises is keeping everyone content. Each group seeks to secure its own rights and strives to preserve its distinct language and culture. In the mountainous regions of this country, various tribes coexist, each maintaining its own unique linguistic and cultural identity. Moreover, these groups harbor grievances against one another that date back hundreds of years. Admittedly, Iran has succeeded in unifying these diverse groups under the overarching umbrella of Shia Islam. Nevertheless, protests are frequently observed throughout the country. Most recently, a wave of protests that began in December 2025 continues to this day, having already claimed the lives of over 7,000 people. This constitutes the largest protest movement witnessed since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. Managing these disparate elements and keeping them united under a single banner has always been an arduous task for Iran. At any given moment, one group or another is bound to be disaffected. While this multi-ethnic composition poses a challenge for Iran internally, it presents an even greater obstacle for any external invader. Any power contemplating the conquest of Iran would first have to contend with its formidable geography and subsequently attempt to bring its diverse internal population into line, a feat that appears virtually impossible. This is precisely why, during the British colonial era, when the British held sway over the entire subcontinent, no foreign power ever succeeded in turning Iran into a colony. Both the United States and Israel are acutely aware of this reality. Consequently, President Trump has repeatedly urged the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow the ruling Islamic regime, for they too recognize that defeating Iran without harnessing the power of its own people is a near impossible. In 1941, the British and Russians occupied the country, an operation facilitated notably by the assistance of the Iranian Shah's own son. Their objective was to prevent Nazi forces from utilizing Iran as a strategic base during the Second World War. Even during that period, various Iranian factions turned against the government, creating a volatile situation that bordered on civil war. Furthermore, while these groups undoubtedly harbor internal differences, they remain inextricably linked through their shared religious identity. Shia Muslims constitute 95% of Iran's population. Historically, whenever Iran has faced external aggression, these diverse groups have invariably united in the face of such a crisis. In September 1980, shortly after the Iranian Revolution had swept through the country, Saddam Hussein surmised that Iran's military was likely in disarray and its political system significantly weakened. Acting on this assumption, Iraq launched an invasion with the explicit intent of conquering Iran. However, the conflict that Saddam Hussein had initially underestimated dragged on for the next 8 years. Although the Iraqi military made deep incursions into Iranian territory during the initial stages, Iran succeeded in reclaiming its lost ground within just 2 years. In this war, it was not merely the military that took up arms. Ordinary citizens too joined the fray, rallying together under a single banner and willingly sacrificing their lives for the cause. Saddam Hussein had anticipated that Iran's Arab minority would defect to the Iraqi side, and that the Kurds would foment unrest, thereby causing Iran to fracture from within. However, all of Saddam Hussein's expectations were dashed. The very groups that had previously been at odds with one another, united under the collective umbrella of their shared Shia identity during the war, a convergence that served to further bolster Iranian nationalism. After 8 years of warfare and a staggering 1 million casualties, both Iraq and Iran were ultimately left exhausted. Yet, having failed to seize even a single inch of territory, Saddam Hussein was ultimately forced to concede defeat. Iran's most formidable weapon is not its army but rather its sheer geographical scale. It is not a diminutive target that can be captured within a mere few weeks. Rather, it is a vast strategic labyrinth spanning 1.6 million square kilometers, an expanse large enough to accommodate 2 nations the size of Pakistan. Even if an invading force were to successfully breach its borders, an immediate victory would remain an impossibility. They would still be required to navigate centuries-old mountain passes, traverse desolate desert plateaus, and penetrate deep into the country to reach its interior cities. This is known as the concept of strategic depth. It implies that the deeper the enemy penetrates, the more extended their supply lines become. The pressure regarding fuel and logistics intensifies, while defensive forces gain even more time to prepare obstacles. Furthermore, major cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Mashhad are not situated along the border, but are instead safely located deep within the interior destinations the enemy would reach only after having been thoroughly exhausted. Thus, it would not be incorrect to say that the very terrain of Iran acts as a silent guardian, turning time itself into its greatest weapon. We hope you will all generously like and share this video from Shadow Atlas. Thank you so much for your encouraging comments. We look forward to seeing you in our